Welcome to the Kentucky Public Library Trustee Certification Program, sponsored by the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives and the Kentucky Public Library Association. This program is for educational purposes only. If the library board needs legal advice, an attorney should be consulted. Today we will be discussing the governance of Kentucky Public Libraries. After viewing this presentation, you will better understand the differences between laws, bylaws, policies, and procedures. You will also have general working knowledge of the 10 essential policies and general knowledge of library standards. Let's begin. What is a law? A law is a specific written legislation that is usually made by elected officials and administered through the courts. The main difference between law and policy is who has the authority to create it and how it can be enforced. Kentucky Revised Statutes, Chapter 173, is where laws regarding the governance of libraries can be found. Chapter 173 is divided into 4 sections of governance, which correspond to how a library is established. A trustee cannot be expected to be well-versed in the specifics of all laws and cases that apply to public libraries in Kentucky, but it is important to take the time to be generally aware of library law. A first step is to know how your library was established in order to reference the correct section of KRS Chapter 173 for laws that apply to your library. This also causes some difficulty for trustees to discuss issues with their peers, as every library may be affected differently. Remember, bylaws, policies, and procedures established by the library are always subordinate to both state and federal law. If a conflict exists, the law must prevail. What are bylaws? Bylaws are the rules written and adopted by the library board to provide structure for how the board will conduct its business. Bylaws are a framework for board operations. They should be direct and factual. Many are based on legal requirements. As the bylaws are somewhat difficult to modify, they should not contain anything which might be subject to frequent revision, but should be substantial enough to guide the organization. Bylaws cannot be as easily changed as policies, and changing the bylaws could have legal ramifications. So what is a policy? A policy is a set of guidelines used to coordinate and execute activity based on the goals and objectives of an organization. The library board spends much of its time on developing policies that reflect the library's philosophy of service. Policies should reflect local, state, and federal law, as well as local and state standards. Well-defined and well-written policies guide trustees and staff in carrying out their duties. There are 3 different types of policies that concern libraries. These are personal, operational, and board. The Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives can provide guidance to library boards and directors when it comes to developing these policies. Personnel policies are internal policies that codify applicable laws that help stream management. Some sample policies that KDLA can assist with include leave policies, work schedule policies, salary payment, retirement, termination, grievance procedures, education assistance, certification, hiring, job descriptions, evaluations, disabilities or ADA, and several more. Many sample policies provide multiple options. The following 2 slides are specific examples taken from the list. This is an example of a salary payment policy. Please take a minute to read over this policy. This is an example of a library certification policy. Please take a minute to read over this policy. Operational policies direct library use and create a framework for procedures. They allow employees to work independently. Some sample policies that KDLA can assist with include collection management, material selection and complaints, gifts, circulation, customer behavior, problem patron, genealogy, internet use, social networking, weapons and firearms, smoking, and several more. Many sample policies provide multiple options. The following 2 slides are specific examples taken from the list. This is an example of a customer behavior policy. Please take a minute and read over this policy. This is an example of a gift policy. Please take a minute to read over this policy. Board policies provide guidelines for making consistent decisions and provide crisis policy making. They also tell trustees what is expected of them. KDLA can provide guidance in creating board policies. In 2012, KDLA, with the assistance of the State Auditor's Office, identified 10 areas where boards need to have policy statements. KDLA has put together a best practice guide of 10 essential board policies that every library board should adopt. These policies are not intended to change the way boards are operating because business is already being conducted this way. This will serve to demonstrate to others the manner in which we perform the public's business. The following slide is an example taken from the list. This is an example of a conflict of interest policy. Please take a minute to read over this policy. What is a procedure? Procedure is a particular way of accomplishing something by following a series of steps which provides consistency. Procedures are developed by library administration or staff to carry out a policy that has been approved by the library board. Trustees would develop procedures for any policies that are concerned with the internal operations of the library board itself, not the library in general. So how do policies and procedures differ? Let's take a closer look. Policies look at what action needs to be taken. Procedures describe how the action will be carried out. Policies are a guiding principle. Procedures are a series of steps to be followed. Policies have a widespread application where procedures are narrower. Policies change less frequently and procedures are prone to change. Policies use broad terms and procedures are written with detail. Policies are expressed in statements of what and why. Procedures are expressed in how, when, and sometimes who. Policies answer major operational issues and procedures describe the process of handling those issues. Policies are written by trustees. Procedures are written by library administrators or staff. This is an example of collection maintenance policy that the library board has approved. This is an example of the procedures the library director and staff developed to implement the approved policy. This is an example of a tuition reimbursement policy that the library board approved. This is an example of the procedures the library director developed to implement the approved policy. Standards can be defined as any tools which are called standards by their creators and which attempt to prescribe specific activities and performance measures for libraries. They can also be defined as guidelines developed with less formal authority. Compliance will be voluntarily and dependent on staff's professional pride and dedication to library service. The development of the Kentucky Public Library Standards was guided by the belief that Kentucky's public libraries play a critical role in providing free access to knowledge, information, and diversity of ideas, and that all Kentucky residents need and deserve at least a basic level of library service. Standards provide a guide to excellence. They define the kind of public library services that should be available to all Kentuckians. Stressing ongoing planning and evaluation, standards provide baseline data and establish a strong foundation from which to develop local goals to address local needs. They are an essential assessment tool to use in evaluating the library's effectiveness and a guide to assist in planning for improved services. The utilization of standards can maximize the library's role in the community by focusing resources. The ultimate outcome is heightened visibility and support for the library. The Standards Committee is made up of KDLA staff and public library directors. The purpose of the committee is to evaluate and revise the Kentucky Public Library standards. The committee also devises and implements an award system using the standards. There are 3 levels of achievement: essential, enhanced, and exemplary. Each level builds upon the previous. The Kentucky Public Library standards are divided into 7 categories: governance and administration, human resources, collections, services, facilities, technology, and marketing and public relations. Public libraries in Kentucky are established according to Kentucky Revised Statutes Chapter 65, 67, and 173. Boards of trustees have been created by law to act as governing bodies for the library. Library board members are public officials who provide the leadership and vision necessary for effective and efficient operation of the library and for following sound practices of planning, administration, management, and funding. Directors and staff use sound library administration and management practices to apply the policies and statutory obligations of the governing board to the daily operations of the library. The success of virtually every program and service of the library depends upon having a skilled, motivated staff. In order to recruit and retain such a workforce, the library must seek out the most qualified candidates, offer competitive salaries and benefits, support ongoing training and professional development opportunities, and provide a work environment that ensures equitable treatment for all employees. Kentucky Public Libraries should provide a wide range of materials in all formats to meet customer needs. These standards recognize that developing a current healthy collection can be a difficult task without adequate funding. This section recommends minimum level of funding and holdings per population served as one way to measure the effectiveness of the library's collection. Libraries are active providers of information services, readers advisory services, educational support, youth and children's services, and programs. Well-qualified and trained library staff plays an essential role in delivering these effective services and programs to all members of the community. Extension services and outreach programs make resources as widely available as possible, while technology enables remote access to libraries' resources and digital resources. These standards recognize the importance of a library's service program, including alternative access for those unable to use traditional library resources. The appearance of public libraries directly affects community use. They should be large enough to adequately meet the needs of the service population. The library interior should have a flexible design to allow for changes in the service needs of the community. They should be conveniently located, aesthetically pleasing, have ample parking, and be free of physical barriers. Information technology is an integral part of today's public library service. It is the responsibility of every public library to provide access to information in a timely manner and in an appropriate format. The library meets this need by providing trained staff, up-to-date technology, and adequate communications that provide quick, reliable connections. The primary function of library marketing is to find and keep customers. The primary function of library public relations is to ensure the library has a strong public image. Marketing combines advertising, promotion, publicity, and public relations to build awareness, interest, desire, and finally, action. Libraries must market programs, services, and collections. A successful public relations program sends a positive message through the appropriate medium to the right audience at the proper time and place, and should reinforce the mission or vision of the library. A law is a specific written legislation that is usually made by elected officials and administered through the courts. Bylaws are the rules written and adopted by the library board to provide the structure for how the board will conduct business. A policy is a set of guidelines used to coordinate and execute activity based on goals and objectives of an organization. And a procedure is a particular way of accomplishing something by following a series of steps which provides consistency. In 2012, KDLA, with the assistance of the State Auditor's Office, identified 10 areas where boards need to have policy statements. KDLA has put together a best practices guide of 10 essential board policies that every library board should adopt. The development of the Kentucky Public Library Standards was guided by the belief that Kentucky's public libraries play a critical role in providing free access to knowledge, information, and diversity of ideas, and that all Kentucky residents need and deserve at least a basic level of library service. The Kentucky Public Library Standards are divided into 7 categories: governance and administration, human resources, collections, services, facilities, technology, and marketing and public relations. As you complete each prescribed training, you may mail or email the filled out learning activity report to the Continuing Education Consultant's Office at KDLA. Learning activity report forms can be found on the Trustee Certification webpage. There are a total of 5 prescribed training programs that are required to receive your initial certification. You must also complete the following 4 prescribed training programs: strategic planning and library advocacy, conducting a library board meeting, fiscal responsibility, and library trustee and director roles. After the 5 prescribed training programs have been completed, you must mail your application for certification to the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives. A Kentucky Public Library Trustee certificate will be issued to you. This certificate will be valid for 4 years. You can mail applications and learning activity reports to Continuing Education Consultant Trustee Certification at the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives, 300 Coffee Tree Road, P.O. Box 537, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40602, 0537. Remember, learning activity reports can be sent by email or email attachment to kdla.certification@ky.gov. Thank you and good luck.